This episode of the Nerf Herder Council is brought to you by Audible. Visit audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. Warning: the following podcast contains irreverent humor, exceptionally nerdy opinions, potential cursing, and plenty of love for the prequels. If any of the preceding offends you, please turn off this podcast immediately, and may the Force be with you.
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder!
You can't use that word! Only we can use that word!
Still as weak as ever. And they call you Master.
You know, when I cut you in half, I should have aimed for your neck instead.
You're tuned in to the Nerf Herder Council, your source for Star Wars opinion, conversation, and debate. Featuring your hosts, JT, Star Wars. It's freaking Star Wars. Like, what, is she gonna go to fucking Jedi library or something? AJ.
Yeah, Rebels is a lot like our show, where we think we have a good idea and then it just fails in execution.
Steve.
It's a sign of any good audio podcast is visuals, right?
On this episode of the Nerf Herder Council, with comic book series, cartoons, YouTube videos, you name it, is there such a thing as too much Star Wars? And does it all need to be connected?
This is the Nerf Herder Council.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. I am your host, JT. With me are AJ and Steve. And you can tell we just had dinner. That was not me. But I will probably have to clear my throat because I just had Alfredo sauce and some cheese on my piata, which is delicious.
I'll just throw in my random 2 cents that I ate Jimmy John's because probably all I'm going to say during this show anyways.
What did you have at Jimmy John's?
A sandwich.
Which sandwich?
I don't friggin' remember.
They made a whole commercial about having wheat bread finally.
Like 9 grain or something?
I skipped the wheat bread. So, there. Now we've established what our lives have been like for the past 11 minutes. Yep. Star Wars, right?
That place. They support Brock Lesnar.
Well,
I needed to go find some place that could make food in about 37 seconds so I could get home to podcast. So
that was a strategic comment because now we are a pro wrestling podcast, a UFC podcast, and a fast food podcast.
And a steroid podcast.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Reckless speculation.
No, it's really not. He's pissed dirty so many times.
Nice.
You're talking about my Universal Champion, damn it.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
Okay.
well, to bring it around to Star Wars, AJ showed us the Black
Talking
Series
about
porgs.
other things that involve scripts.
Yeah. Right.
I thought belching during the intro would have caused us to start this over, but oh well.
Nope. Nah. But yeah, so you actually...
I already wrote the time down, so we got to continue.
There it is. So you picked up the Black Series porgs, which I had already. Go figure, because I collect the Black Series.
Yeah.
So $6 for those 2 little things. But, you know, I think they're cool. And then I brought you the...
$3 for an inch-tall piece of plastic. I think I might have been ripped off.
I had to buy it because I'm a completist and I'm trying to get all the Black Series. So
Yeah, me too. And you know what? I have no need for these things because my rule is Imperials only. Like, it's got to be anyone in armor, basically.
Okay.
Because it's easy to mold those correctly, and like the faces, even with the new painting, is kind of wonky, but you know, whatever. And yet still, I'm like, porgs are funny. What the hell? But now I've got them. I'm like, I'm not even going to take them out of the box.
I thought maybe I had paid extra because I got mine at GameStop, and it's usually a little pricier, but apparently not. So $6 is the going rate on a pair of Black Series porgs.
Yep, that's it.
And then I brought you something I found in a really cool vintage toy shop a few weeks ago.
Oh, this thing's amazing.
The Return of the Jedi glass from 1983.
From Burger King.
Yep. Does it have Burger King logos or anything on there?
Yes, it does. And the Coca-Cola logo.
See, I totally forgot because the guy's like, yeah, it's one of the Burger King ones from 83. I was like, well, I got to get that for AJ. Good Lord, is that really necessary?
Unwrapping it on Mike.
Well, maybe Mike doesn't want to have it unwrapped on him.
Whoa, that's a whole different thing.
That's why I went there.
We're a family-friendly show, damn it.
Not tonight.
Guess not. Jeez. Awkward. In the Emperor's throne room, Luke Skywalker confronts Darth Vader in a desperate lightsaber battle. The Emperor, supreme ruler of the galaxy, is accompanied by a red-helmeted Emperor's Royal Guard and one of the Imperial dignitaries. I almost made it through one take, and I never read this before. That's pretty good.
No, we're really not a family show. I don't want to hear about Vader's red helmeted guards.
I'm just glad you started laughing at the same time I did because I caught it too.
Right? How could we not? Oh my God.
No, this thing is crazy though. Like
As
I didn't
he pulls out his purple helmeted shaft.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so one of the tags on this one is going to be NSFW.
Yeah, exactly. Where's the
TVM?
Where's the? I didn't even
Oh,
notice.
so that means no editing. Cool.
Yeah. Right. Oh, it does have the. Oh yeah.
No, but there's 4 in the series. I had one already, and it was from Jabba's palace. Now this has got my favorite scene in any Star Wars movie because it's the one that I remember first, which is Vader and Luke clashing sabers in front of the Emperor in the throne room there on the Death Star 2. And then there's that dude, the dignitary, as the description on the glass reads. Like, I don't remember seeing a dignitary. I just remember 2 royal guards being dismissed, and they just kind of like walk around the other side of the elevator.
I'm almost positive that they're in there, and I'm not remembering where. First, I have to go back and look for it.
This seems like one of those times when they got to plan the marketing campaign so far out in advance that stuff ends up in the marketing, like Zuvio for episode 7, where they're like. Yeah, this guy is going to be awesome. And then he gets cut or just doesn't appear anywhere except for the very background of a shot.
Right.
I fully believe this guy is somewhere in footage of Return of the Jedi, but I don't remember him at all.
He's like a Death Star bathroom attendant.
That's why he's got gloves on.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. It was a cut scene where the Emperor's just walking out of the bathroom, wiping his hands, and he's got Vader's telling him he's got toilet paper on his shoe. And you see that guy in the doorway. But so
now I got to track down that guy in footage and see where he actually came from.
I'm almost positive it's easy to find, but
apparently his name is Sim Alu, and I'm trying to find a picture of him.
You're on Wikipedia, aren't you?
No, Google image.
It's all the same, right?
This is riveting. This is great radio right here, guys.
You keep talking.
I was about to get to the topic. What the heck? Did you just break your computer? You can do that?
No, the screen detaches. It's cool
Okay.
like that. All right, so Sim Alu is in there, I guess. Yeah.
I thought so. All right.
Okay.
All right. I was right.
Darn, does that mean I have to go back and rewatch Return of the Jedi again?
What a shame.
But that's not Sim Alu. Sim Alu is the dude next to him that's closer to Vader.
Well, whatever the case. Wait a minute. That looks like a dude from episode 3, not episode 4. Or 6 for that matter, for sure. I don't remember. Oh, well. I'll look it up later.
Yeah.
We're on the air. Let's do this.
All right. So you had a topic that you wanted to discuss. So why don't you tease it in here and, let us know where we're going, and off we go to the Star Wars races.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that I've realized as we always try to come up with show topics around here, I have a really hard time sometimes because we know the movies really well, right? We've all seen the movies. How well do we know the TV?
That's what we watch the movies on.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, kind of. We've seen most of it.
I've seen every Rebels episode.
Most of us have seen most of it, right? How many comic books have you guys read?
Not a single one.
How many books have you guys read?
Few.
I've read 2 comic books in the history of ever and no books. So.
You know they all count now, right?
Unfortunately.
Now the question is, as this stuff begins to bleed into the movies, is that a good thing or a bad thing? That was the whole big thing with Disney's reboot of canon was now it's all going to count. Do you guys like that? I mean, as film purists where you don't really care about the other stuff?
I'm okay with it as long as it doesn't start to become something where, for example, if they don't put, let's just use, the glaring example, the Knights of Ren or Snoke's backstory into episode 9, if that's not in the movie, if they then say, oh, well, it's in this comic book, so you have to read the comic, okay.
Yeah, I'm just not going to know that until we talk about it, and I'm not going to go out and read any comic books.
Yeah,
I'm not chasing this stuff down.
Yeah, if they start having like major plot points going into areas that I'm not really interested in exploring, that's going to annoy me.
I know that kind of makes us like jerk Star Wars fans to some people, but just that's my personal thing. I'm not going to chase down stuff. It needs to be spoon fed to me through a movie theater. Otherwise, I don't really care.
Well, it's also how much time do you have?
None.
I mean, there are so many. I mean, when you go on Star Wars Newsnet, they have reviews all the time of like, here's Star Wars number 8, here's Darth Vader number 9, here's the Poe Dameron series, here's the Lando series, here's Dr. Aphra. There's like a million different things. Like there's not enough time in the day to keep up on all that.
That's a really good point.
It's
It's great that you got a staff of people that can all read that and post stories on the website, but as 3 people that are just sitting here, I'm not chasing it down. Don't care.
That's why, I mean, it'll really annoy me if they start putting important things in there. As like ancillary stories, that's fine. Keep it to where I don't have to have it.
I barely want to watch the TV shows. So, I mean, I'm not going to go grab books or go track down comic books to find
even The Mandalorian?
Major. I mean, I'm sure I will. But like, I get set in my ways, so every time there's a new show that comes out, it's just like, I'm sure I got something else to watch on Sundays, and I forget about it. It's not that I don't want to watch it. It's just I'm so set in my ways that I just don't think about it. So I end up not watching it.
I completely forgot to watch the last 2 episodes of Resistance, even though I enjoyed the first 3.
Don't know what you're talking about because I haven't watched them either.
Well, I tried today, but apparently PlayStation View doesn't carry Disney Now anymore, so I have to figure that out. But, I mean, it's something I enjoyed, and I just have done other things. But when a movie comes out or, a trailer or something like that, I'm just completely all over it.
Yeah, like I wonder, in the case of like Solo, for example, Darth Maul pops up. How many people went to that movie, see Darth Maul, and are like, when the hell did that happen? Like, where did he come from?
I had a lot of my friends who are not, like as into it as we are, say, what the hell happened? They cut him in half. And then I had to explain the whole Clone Wars thing to them. Mm-hmm. So not a lot of people knew that in my circle of friends. I'm not saying like Star Wars fans in general, because a lot of people did, but the average fan, I mean, that's a perfect example, because the average fan isn't going to know that. The average fan that's just like, I'll see it in the movie theater because it's Star Wars, it's kind of cool to me. Like, they're going to go, he got cut in half. How is he showing up now?
Generally, the person that watches Star Wars and goes, yeah, they're all right movies. Like, those are the people that you're saying that are just not going to know all that stuff. The people that it's really just in passing, like, yeah, I can watch Star Wars, but I'm not a huge fan. Those people are not going to know anything about why the hell Darth Maul is still alive.
Yeah. And it's, and that's, like I said, that's a perfect example, because you put a pretty big plot point into a cartoon that the average person isn't going to watch. It was an awesome Easter egg for those of us that get into it. Mm-hmm. So that was, and I mean, Solo really was a fan service movie, so it's not surprising. But if they start doing that all the time in different mediums that I really couldn't care less about, then I'm not going to be pleased at all, because I just don't have the time to follow it, and I don't want to. I don't read comic books. It's funny, like I love the Marvel movies, and I think the comic book characters are great. I'm a huge Captain America fan. I've never picked up a comic book to read it, but put it on a movie screen so I can digest it in like 2.5 hours, and big explosive sound and everything. Like, yeah, okay, that's fine. But You know, so if Star Wars starts doing stuff where I have to actually pay attention to comics and all this, and especially the books, because then I got to sit through, audiobooks if I'm in the car or actually
At least
read
comic
them.
books, you get pictures.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, right now, Thrawn is a perfect example. The second Thrawn book, because I'm struggling to get through it. I mean, Mark Thompson is a great reader, but I'm just not a fan of his portrayal of some of these characters, and this story is like kind of going nowhere for me. And I understand it's introducing Batuu, which is going to be Galaxy's Edge, where when you go to Disney World or Disneyland. And I don't know this for sure yet. And if you spoil it for me, that's fine. I don't really care. But they're talking about the disturbance in the Force that the Emperor feels, and I'm like, okay, so is this how they introduce Snoke? So
I've already forgotten that book.
Okay. Yeah, it's not grabbing me, and I'm literally just getting through it because I started it and I liked the first one, and it's going to be a trilogy, so I want to know what happens, but I don't really care. So I don't know. There can be too much.
It's going to be a trilogy? Seriously?
Yeah, it's the Thrawn trilogy.
Oh, man. Dude, okay, the first book was good. I liked the first book. I thought that was a great insight into his backstory. The second one, like I said, I already forgot it, and I just read it a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
I'm struggling right now because you just mentioned plot points. I'm like, I should know this. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't remember it at all.
And
so where the hell is the third one going to go? He's had all that time on screen in Rebels, and he's got 2 books under his belt already. Do we really need another Thrawn story? Where the hell are they going to shoehorn that into the timeline?
I don't know. They've
although let's play devil's advocate. What if Thrawn shows up in Episode 9?
I'm fine with it.
But then there's going to be a huge swath of people. General movie-going audiences are going to be like, "Who the hell is this guy?
Yeah, who's the blue dude with the red eyes?"
Be like, "Oh, well, come on! You didn't watch all of Rebels and read the 2 audiobooks?"
Well, that would
read the 2 audiobooks. That's good.
We knew what you meant. We were picking up what you're putting down. I think it'd be kind of cool because if they do the character right on screen in Episode 9, it'll open up the possibility for them to make Thrawn movies. And for all we know, they're introducing him now because maybe Rian Johnson's trilogy is like Thrawn. Maybe the Game of Thrones writers, maybe they're doing a Thrawn type of thing. But I think your point is valid in that people are going to go, who's this blue? Half of us are going to go, holy crap, it's Thrawn. And then the other half are going to go, who the hell's this blue guy?
Yeah, right.
And side note, that's one of the problems that Episode 9 is going to have. I think they kind of painted themselves into a corner. There's too much to explain. And if they start trying to bring out characters like Mara Jade and Thrawn and all these other things, what are you doing? You can't do that. There's a reason why the Marvel Universe leading up to Infinity War had 20-something movies. But this trilogy is going to be the third of 3. You can't do all that.
Yeah.
So, it's like I was saying earlier, how much is too much Star Wars? Because even for fans like us, we do a show, for Christ's sakes, and we're going, yeah, I don't need to read that. Yeah, I don't need to read that. Nah, I don't care. Yeah,
the only way I keep up on this stuff is the Star Wars Explained channel. The guy puts out a monthly video. It's a monthly canon update, and he just summarizes everything that's happened in whatever's been published that month. Because, I don't know how the hell you'd keep up with it otherwise. He's got a YouTube channel. He makes buckets of money off of it because people watch his videos like crazy. But
it's a very intelligent idea.
But yeah, okay, give me a 6-minute synopsis of everything that came out this month, because I don't have time for all those comics and the books and Star Wars Resistance and Forces of Destiny and Clone Wars Saved, or whatever they're going to call Season 7 when that comes out, and The Mandalorian, and whatever came out on Blu-ray that month.
Well, and see, that's another problem that I have, with there being too much stuff, and I have to be very careful how I phrase this so it doesn't sound like I'm, being an asshole. But
it's never stopped you before. Just go.
No, but no. This is a very delicate topic, but we'll say Forces of Destiny and Dr. Aphra. Here's a cartoon all about just the women of Star Wars, and here's the first lesbian character in Star Wars and Dr. Aphra, and it's that kind of stuff. To me, I always wonder does it count as inclusivity when it was done almost as a response to how that's such a big topic in society today? Like, is it forced? And so to me, it just there's this. It's different to me. Like, I feel like I'm being force fed something rather than it being cutting edge. Do you know what I mean? Like when Lando Calrissian was like this major character, everyone's like, oh, he's a major character. He's a colored guy or whatever, And back in the day when that
person of color, I think is what you meant to
whatever,
say.
And I
It's
mean,
a very different connotation.
years ago, it was, it wasn't. People weren't just screaming about there's not enough people of color in lead roles in movies. It just happened and people went, wow, we don't see that very often. But now it almost seems like in some of these things, it's, well, there's not enough women, there's not enough people of color, there's not enough gay people, there's not enough representation. Then all of a sudden these products come out to say, oh, it's all about women. Here's your lesbian character. Like, does that really count? It's almost like the Rooney Rule in the NFL, where they're trying to promote, minorities getting job interviews, but every time a coaching vacancy comes up, you'll see the guy that,
Well, that's a very different topic.
No, I know, but it's just, I have a hard time following it because I feel like, and I don't, and that's what I'm saying.
If Star Wars hadn't been doing it all along, I would say, yeah, it's a weird shift in tone, but Star Wars has a history of doing that. They put Leia in there, and Leia was bossing around the men.
Well, but see, that's what I'm saying.
Leia
that was
choked
like
out Jabba and didn't need help from anybody to handle her own business.
But they didn't do it because the rest of the world was screaming about it.
I think the world is caught up to what Star Wars was doing all along, more so than reverse.
That's a good way to phrase it. And I don't see. That's why I'm not really sure how to express this, because I don't have a problem with it at all. I'm not watching Forces of Destiny because it's, geared towards little girls. I'm not reading Dr. Aphra because I don't want them shoving some lesbian character down my throat. No, I'm not interested in the subject matter. And you're
allowed to be.
Yeah.
That's one of the things about having so many different audiences for Star Wars now, is that not everything is going to be for everyone.
Yeah. And that's when, like you say, like, how much is too much is like, now that they're forcefully doing things like that, does that mean they're getting to a point where it's too much? Like, maybe back off on the content a little bit?
Well, Bob Iger actually did mention that in one of those Disney earnings report, the quarterly, shareholder calls or whatever, where he basically kind of backtracked a little bit on Solo and said, you know what, maybe we put out too much too soon, and the box office reflected a little bit of, fatigue from the fan base.
I still can't believe he said that, considering they're the idiots that made the decision. Like, no, you're putting it out in May, whether we're not changing the date, knowing it was going to screw them. And now the movie suffers, and fans that like it suffer because we're not going to get a sequel that we know of. And it's, oh, well, maybe we made a mistake. You think?
Yeah, I think he even used the term oversaturation. Like, totally true. The market will not sustain a Star Wars movie every 6 months. It's not like Marvel, where you can just have all these separate threads running. It's one story. We're going to have multiple stories coming up, but it's a lot to process, and especially because part of what makes Star Wars special is that you have to have years to obsess before and after a movie to really take it all in. If it comes out more frequently than that, it's just not that special anymore. It's like a retirement match in wrestling. No one cares anymore, because all that means is that you're going to wait a year and come back anyway.
When it's like, we've talked about it.
It's like the 47 Kiss farewell tours.
Right? No, this one's really the last one.
I swear to God, this is the last one.
Sure it is.
You'll never see Ozzy Osbourne either.
Yeah.
The way that guy's singing lately, you don't want to see Ozzy Osbourne. I'm telling you, he just announced another leg of the tour, and Megadeth's opening, which normally in my world, if you were to tell me Ozzy's touring with Megadeth, that's like I'm running to the ticket office. This one, I'm like, dude, Ozzy sounds like crap. Dave Mustaine sounds like crap. I've seen them both.
Okay,
when they were good.
Okay.
I'm like, whatever.
Okay, Star Wars. Remember Star Wars?
I'm just making it the point. I could talk about whatever I want.
So now we're a music, fast food, UFC, steroid, wrestling, Star Wars podcast.
This is why I lead, because I know how to make a point like that and get right back on topic, but he has to belabor the point.
Well, no, now I'm trying to figure out if we can make this podcast thing work out and just talk about all that.
We could.
We are now a general interest podcast. Whatever generally interests us is what we'll talk about.
So it's voting day today. We can.
Hey, that is Star Wars. I did post on my Facebook. The only politics I care about are the taxation of intergalactic trade routes over Naboo.
Ah, nice.
That is all I care about politically. But yeah, I mean,
So especially like comics, for example, like those things, there are a lot of side stories in there. How do you think they've done so far as balancing? Because like you said, they're putting stuff that ties in directly. It all counts as canon. How do you feel they've done with keeping the important stuff in the movies while still having enough meat on the bones for the comics to be worth reading?
I think they've done a great job because really the only example that we really thought of was the Maul, the Maul example from Solo, because they really haven't had that thing where,
Well, didn't you say the Force tree that we saw in Last Jedi started as a concept in the Poe Dameron comic or something?
Well, if I remember the timing of the whole thing, I read that there was going to be a Force tree in episode 8, and then after I had read that, then they started putting it into the comics because it was going to be in episode 8, but I don't think it was in episode 8 because it was in comics. I think it was kind of like a reaction to what was going to be in the movie. So
I wonder about that too. That's probably part of the story group, isn't it? Where everyone's got all these ideas, and then there's that one group that's like, okay, well, we've got this. Now, in what order should we drop these little nuggets of information? I didn't realize, because I just finished Rebel Rising, which is a Jyn Erso book, and I think that came out before Rogue One. I'm pretty sure it came out beforehand. But there were a couple things in there that alluded to other things from the movie and also got picked up later. Like, the Kyber crystal was in there, of course, and all the backstory of like her. She was already in prison at the beginning of the book, and then it flashed back to like how she ended up in prison kind of stuff. But when she was in the Rebel cell with Saw, there were a couple things that were also in. They were in other tie-in books, and they were also in Rogue One, and I want to say the Rebels cartoon at the same time. But the way they rolled them out, they had to do it in such a cadence that no one of those things was a spoiler for another. And it's got to be so hard to because you never know then what to pay attention to. Like you hear something dropped in a book and you're like, okay, whatever, throwaway line, or there's this weird thing in Rebels that's really dumb. I hope that never comes back again. World Between Worlds. But it might.
Whales.
But it might, yeah. Like when do you introduce these things? What is throwaway and what is just foreshadowing for later kind of a thing?
Rebels is throwaway. Excuse me. What? Man, that cheese is really giving me some phlegm tonight.
Right?
No, I think what they've done a really good job of is tailoring what's out there perfectly to the audience, because fans like us, we get the movies and that's what we like the most. We don't mind reading the comics. It's just not our preferred, method of, getting our Star Wars fix. Mm-hmm. So for the fans that are really into every single detail, the movies tell the story, and the books and the comics and things like that kind of tell, they color the characters. Like it tells the background stories and everything, but you don't have to have that. You're not missing anything in the movies. If you haven't, read Rebel Rising, you don't know less than you need to know about Jyn Erso when you're watching Rogue One. So it's good for people that, the extra stuff is good for people that want to know that, but it doesn't screw the people that don't by saying, well, if you'd have watched Forces of Destiny, you'd know what we're talking about in episode 9. Like, oh, damn it.
Right.
So I think they've done a really excellent job of that to keep the stories. And I think the hard thing about that really is for the people that do like all the backstory and everything in the books and novels and cartoons, they've made the stories seem important enough to where they're still interesting. It's not, there's been a few missteps. I mean, like you said, the Obi-Wan book was kind of like, well, he's an old fart in the desert for 30 years. Who cares?
Yeah. Thankfully, that one doesn't count anymore.
Yeah. So. I mean, and they just had to make crap up. He was, I don't know. He was herding banthas or something. I don't know. That doesn't matter. No one cares. But there are stories like, Rebel Rising, or they did Catalyst when it was like the backstory of Rogue One and, Galen Erso and all that kind of stuff, that it's, do you need it? No, but they make it interesting enough to where it'll keep your attention and give you information that enriches the story. Like I know, like Catalyst for me was it was superfluous, but I read it and it made Rogue One cooler.
That's one of my favorites. I thought that was a perfect companion to that. Steve, how do you feel about it? I mean, like Rebels, for example, we got the confrontation between Vader and Ahsoka,
Right.
which is great if you're a Clone Wars fan. That was a great, way to follow that storyline through. But because Clone Wars and Rebels all counts alongside the movies as official storyline, like now you're looking at your favorite character of Vader with all this additional information, and it might be kind of weird to think that like it's not just some dude in a suit, it's some guy that went to a Sith temple on this planet and had this fight, and all the things that happened to the character. Like, how do you feel about that, having to watch these cartoons and take in those plot points right alongside what you see in the movies?
Thankfully, I'm glad for, at least in this instance, social media, and the fact that there's so many people that do extra legwork for us, that watch the TV shows and read the comic books and find the major plot points that really tie into the movies, and they make little articles about it, so we can kind of stumble across all that and still digest it, I guess, to the rest of the movies.
It's like Cliff Notes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like like you were mentioning, just anything that's major. Like, I know I saw the Ahsoka Vader thing, but had I just not wanted to watch any Rebels, period, I know I could have went online and people were just talking crazy about it. So I still would have been able to see it and at least digest it and add it to the character. So I do like the fact that I can learn a couple extra things about my favorite character in Star Wars.
What about the weirder stuff though? Cartoons get kind of weird. Clone Wars,
I'm just
was
trying to think about
action, and Rebels got weird. Like Vader came down standing on top of his ship, which made for a cool visual, but it's friggin' weird.
You had to remind me of that, didn't you?
Honestly, I never even thought twice about watching that, other than like you said, it was just odd to see him do that, but I never went.
So you weren't sitting there going, oh man, really? Seriously, that's what you do?
Not my first thought whatsoever. It's just like AJ said. It was just, you see the ship and you just see him on it. You're like, why? But that's kind of where it stops right there.
And in the context of a cartoon, it totally works. But then for me, my brain goes,
no.
My brain then goes, well, wait a minute. I've seen this guy in a movie, and the guy from the movie would never do that. That doesn't make sense in a movie. And that's where Solo got kind of hard to take at times, because that felt much more like a live action cartoon than a Star Wars movie. Like Lady Proxima and all that stuff. A lot of it seemed slapsticky to the point of being more like a live action cartoon than being a film adaptation of Star Wars.
See, I thought Lady Proxima was the only weird part. I mean, I saw that, I was like, well, this is very Dark Crystal-ish.
Right.
And then as soon as he broke the window with the rock and they took off running, there wasn't anything after that I was like, I liked it. To the point where when I saw some of the concept art and like set photos where, from Corellia, where all the vehicles were all square looking, I'm like, what lazy ass drew that? But then on the screen, it looked really cool.
Yeah.
So, that was...
I guess I never try to put that much thought into it. I never go into that extreme of a detail on what I'm looking at, I guess. So I just kind of take it at face value.
Well, and the other flip side of this, and I've got a friend of mine who loves the Legends books, just adores them. And there's a whole legion of fans that's their Star Wars. Like they grew up with the books because it was the dark times, between the trilogies. And they love all those stories. So when Disney comes by and says, yeah, it doesn't count, just forget all that crap, then they're all pissed off because their Star Wars just got obliterated. And at the same time, like when the books didn't count, you could get some weird stuff and take it in some other weird directions. Once you've got that burden of connecting it all to the movies, it feels like you kind of diminish your storytelling options a little bit too, doesn't it?
Yeah. With that said, though, we don't know what's coming. So, I mean, they're again, we don't know that for the example I used previously, that Thrawn might not show up in episode 9, and then all of a sudden one of these new trilogies is going to be all Thrawn based, and they're going to bring back more stuff from the EU because they've been slowly doing that.
I want a Bendu trilogy.
I'm going to punch you in the head. Oh my gosh.
He would be in the second act of the trilogy, actually. Second act. He should be in the second act of a Thrawn trilogy. He's the one in the middle.
No, absolutely not. But yeah, I mean, we don't know what's coming, so there could be all these other stories because, as we know, the story group has said that they're like 3 years ahead.
Isn't that kind of fun? So all the weird stuff happening in the comic books right now, 3 years from now, we might be like in a movie theater going, "Holy crap! Okay, now I get it."
It would be interesting to go back and look, listen to us talking like now, and then 3 years from now, look at what's out there and see how they planned it. And just, you didn't really know it was coming at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so it very well could be, something really, really cool that right now just seems kind of stupid. I mean, the Knights of Ren. What if one of the trilogies is the whole backstory of the Knights of Ren and Luke's Academy? I mean, who knows?
What if they do put those in supplemental material instead of the main movies? I mean, especially with episode 9. I mean, you've only got 2 hours and change on screen. Can they really address everything that has gone unanswered so far in this trilogy?
No. And I mean, they potentially could, but that movie kind of has the same burden that episode 3 had, in that it has to tie things up. And I think they have too many loose threads that have the potential for a lot of exposition that I don't think they can cover it all. And I think they painted themselves into a corner in that respect.
And that's the other thing about the connected universe. I wonder how many things they deliberately leave for, material in books and comics and TV shows and stuff.
That's the $1 million question. I mean, people that are all pissed off about, the Knights of Ren and Snoke's background and all this stuff, like, are they doing this on purpose to leave openings for other properties?
Man, I hope not. I never want to walk into a movie and feel like I'm getting an incomplete story on purpose.
Well, I don't know if it's on purpose, but I think we're getting an incomplete story. I mean, I don't care. I don't think the Knights of Ren thing is hugely important. I don't give a crap about Snoke's background. I mean, if I see it, that's fine. But no one ever complained about the Emperor's background.
After episode 7, I felt like we needed to know about the Knights of Ren, because they kind of they brought them up just enough to make you go, who the hell are these guys? But then in episode 8, when they basically acted like that never happened, now I feel like I could really care less if they tell the story or not.
Well, see, the interesting thing about the Knights of Ren to me, though, is that it's really a concept that's been blown out of proportion by the super nerds like us, because in the movie, Snoke has some sort of, like, he's got phlegm in his throat when he says, "Even you, master of the Knights of Ren." I'm like, what the hell did he just say? Like,
and if I remember,
I'm like, does he need to cough or something?
If I remember
and then it
correctly,
shows him in the vision, but only for a second. I mean, you really got to see like freeze frames.
Wasn't that part of the trailer or something too? Like, didn't we see that shot in the rain and everything? With
I think so.
So I think
at least the close up of Kylo.
I think that might have been something to do with it too. If we saw them in the trailer, that probably didn't help that we didn't get that story, because we talked about that in the last show, where you see things in the trailers like in Rogue One with the TIE fighter coming up, then we were like, where's that scene in the movie? And then it never happens.
Yeah.
Well, crap. Luke's hand on R2-D2's dome was in the Force Awakens trailer.
Yeah.
It showed up in a flashback in Last Jedi.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it's just that we got that and we saw the trailer 47 million times between just the three of us.
Right.
That we were like, where are the Knights of Ren? But like I said, now after episode 8, it's just like, like, I don't care if they tell me about it or not. It'll be cool if they did, but if they don't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they've taken the character in a direction that you don't really. It's. I don't think it's really necessary. I think.
Yeah, going into episode 9, you feel like it's just a struggle of power with Kylo and Hux. If they don't go anywhere past that, because that's kind of what they led to at the end of episode 8. So if they dive into anything else, cool. If not,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lor Santeca's backstory was in the Poe Dameron comic.
Yeah, see, there's something that you don't need to know. But if it's out there, okay, that's interesting.
Okay.
But they don't make it something so important where you're missing something in the movie if you don't know it. You know, you're like, who's Laura Santeca?
Yeah.
Okay, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Even in that instance, I remember sitting there when we went to go see episode 7, and I went, who the hell is this old guy? And then I think you guys told me who it was, and I just went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like
Sometimes characters just are.
Yeah, I never just thought to myself, like, holy crap, I gotta go home and figure out who the hell this old dude was. It was just like, who was that guy? Oh, okay, that's who he was. Cool,
Yeah,
whatever.
and nobody does that
go
with
on about the rest of my day.
Yeah, and nobody does that with Lando Calrissian when they see Empire for the first time. There's like, who the hell is this guy? And then he's a new character, and off you go.
Yeah.
No one's like, oh man, how does he have a mind, and why does he say it's my ship? Like, and people like you wonder, but
And how many
sometimes-
capes does he own?
yeah, but I mean, sometimes a character just is. I mean, it's again, nobody back in the day was like, where'd the Emperor come from? Why is he this? Why is he that? Why does he look like a prune? Like this, like it just no, he was a really bad guy. So why can't Snoke just be a really bad guy? I mean, what does it matter? So, I mean, that's why these stories are cool, because are they interesting? Do they broaden the characters? Yes, but do you need it? No.
I think this is where all these supplemental materials really help with the connected universe.
Yeah, I agree.
Because like you said, like there's all these things that could be answered, but if you took the time to do it in a movie, it would just take away from moving the narrative forward.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a whole movie that's just, hey, here's backstory in this guy. Here's backstory in this guy. Here's backstory in this guy. And you also don't
just
want to have
constant explanation.
so much exposition when you first introduce something that bogs it down either. I
Yeah.
like that it just jumps right in and goes like, okay, here's the story moving forward. And if you want to know more, well, we might get around to it later, but it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it might be a topic for a later show, but they might be diving into that since there's rumors going around of episode 9
Well,
being a 2-part.
I haven't seen that. You mentioned that in a text, and I have not seen that.
That is a different show. Definitely a different
Yeah.
show.
But yeah, that might delve into that whole thing that you're just talking about of they really open the doors and they start explaining way too much. And then you have to go, okay, we're going to cut it off in the middle and wait till next year and give you the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And I don't know after the backlash of episode 8 if that is going to be the correct way to go about this. So,
No,
like I said, definitely a new show on that one, but
A good topic for another time.
Yeah. So on that end, why don't we get out of here for this week? So thanks once again, everybody, as I stumble and stutter through another outro. Are we going to can this for? I need to just say it.
Nope.
Damn it.
That's why it's good we're our own bosses on this show, because we would have been canned a long time ago otherwise.
Exactly. So thanks everyone for checking out another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. Don't forget, we are brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. Thanks to Galactic Empire for allowing us to use their music for our theme song. You can find their stuff on Rise Records. They have 2 albums out that are awesome. I still listen to them all the time. You can find us on pretty much any podcast application that you're into: Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, CastBox, Spotify, all those good places. Every one of our episodes is available on YouTube. The website is nerfherdercouncil.com. You can interact with us on our Facebook page. You can email us feedback@nerfherdercouncil.com, or you can hang out with us on Twitter. That is @NHC Podcast. So once again, I'm your host, JT at Dogpound Jedi. He's AJ.
At Drake Adams 579.
He's Steve.
At JSteve1005.
And we will catch you next time.
This bucket of bolts is never gonna get us past that blockade.
This bucket's got a few surprises left in her. Plus, me and Chewie are on it. Ain't that right, Chewie?
Hell yeah, you my nerf herder.
You my Nerf Herder.